We all want companies to do the right thing. But have you ever stopped to wonder why it seems so hard for them to actually do it? The road to being socially responsible is paved with good intentions, for sure, but it's also absolutely full of hidden roadblocks that can stop even the most dedicated businesses in their tracks. So that's really the core question, isn't it? If being socially responsible is supposed to be so great for everyone, why do so many businesses have such a tough time with it? We hear all about the benefits, but I think the real insights come when you start to understand the struggles. Okay, so here's our plan for this explainer. First, we'll get on the same page about what we're even talking about. Then, we'll dig into the three biggest hurdles: the money problem, the challenge of pleasing everyone, and the logistical nightmare of it all. And finally, we'll look at what actually works for the companies that are truly committed to making a difference. All right, let's start with the first piece of this whole thing, the social responsibility puzzle itself. Because before we can really break down the obstacles, we need to be crystal clear on what the goal is. What does social responsibility actually mean for a business? So at its core, social responsibility, or SR, is basically a massive balancing act. On one hand, a company has to make a profit to survive. That's just business. But on the other hand, it also has a duty to do things that are good for society and the environment. It's this constant challenge of making financial success and positive impact work together. Now, for the first major hurdle, and honestly, it's a giant one, the money. For so many companies, the entire conversation about doing good starts and often ends with the bottom line. The first challenge is just the upfront cost. I mean, think about it. Using sustainable materials, paying higher wages, investing in cleaner technology, all of that costs real money. Now, for a huge corporation, that might just be another line item in the budget. But for a small or medium-sized business, those kinds of costs can literally threaten their survival. And this brings us to a huge conflict in timing. You see, investors in the market are usually demanding profits right now, this quarter. But the real benefits of social responsibility, things like customer loyalty and a stronger brand, those are part of a long game. They can take years to pay off. So you're caught in this constant tug of war between today's numbers and tomorrow's value. And that gets to the measurement problem. You can pretty easily calculate the return on investment for, say, a new factory machine. But how do you put a dollar value on a happier workforce or a cleaner river? It's almost impossible to quantify, which makes it a really tough sell to people who are focused only on the numbers. And that's the perfect segue, actually. Because even if a company figures out the money part, they run headfirst into another complicated problem, the stakeholder maze. This is all about juggling the totally different and often competing needs of everyone who has a stake in the business. I mean, just imagine trying to keep all of these groups happy at the same time. You've got investors demanding higher returns. You've got employees who want fair wages. Customers are pushing for ethical products. And the local community wants you to protect their environment. Making one group happy often means making another one unhappy. It's a constant high-wire act. And the pushback doesn't always come from the outside. A lot of the time, the biggest hurdles are internal. To really implement meaningful social responsibility, you often have to change the very culture of a company, how things have always been done. And that kind of deep change is hard, and you can bet it's going to be met with some serious resistance from within. Okay, next up, we have this double whammy of integrity and logistics. See, it's not enough to just say you want to do good things. You have to prove you mean it, and then you have to actually execute it on a massive scale, which can be unbelievably complex. You've almost certainly heard this term before, greenwashing. This is basically when a company is all talk, no action. They spend more time and money on marketing how green they are than on actually doing anything to help the environment. And this is a huge risk, because if you get called out for faking it, the damage to your reputation and trust can be catastrophic. And just try to wrap your head around the scale of this. A big company could have thousands of suppliers in dozens of countries all over the world. How do you possibly monitor every single one of them to make sure they're treating workers right and following environmental rules? It's a monumental logistical nightmare that requires incredible resources. And on top of all that, you've got other issues. A lot of companies just don't have anyone in-house who knows how to run these programs. They struggle just to figure out what problem to tackle first. And then there's that very real fear that if they spend a fortune on doing the right thing and their competitors don't, they'll just get crushed on price. So after hearing about this mountain of challenges, you might be thinking, is this whole thing a lost cause? Well, no, not at all. So let's flip the script. Let's move away from the problems and talk about the solutions and see how the businesses that are really committed to this actually manage to overcome these obstacles? It really seems to come down to these 4 key things. First, it has to be driven from the very top. The leaders have to truly believe in it. Second, it can't be some side project. It has to be baked into the core strategy of the business. Third, you have to be radically transparent with everyone involved. And finally, you have to have the patience to see it as a long-term investment, not a quick win. So, here's the most crucial takeaway. Yes, these challenges are real and they're significant. They're financial, they're relational, they're logistical, but they are not impossible to overcome. The thing that separates the companies that succeed from the ones that don't is a combination of genuine, authentic commitment and a really smart long-term plan. And that brings us to one last question for you to think about. Now that we've broken down all these different roadblocks, from the constant pressure for short-term profits to the mind-boggling complexity of a global supply chain, which one of these challenges do you think is the single toughest mountain for a business to climb? It's a tough question, and there's definitely no easy answer.